All right, I'm at my buddy Rob's house in Yokohama. Rob is a good close friend of mine. We've known each other for many years now. We're both from the same university in New York, and we studied abroad together in here in Japan in Osaka. So Rob has a really nice, interesting story. He's not a jet. He was never a jet, but he did teach English for a while. So do you want to tell everyone where you're from?
Oh yeah, all right. So I'm from, like just said, we went to the same college, but I'm from Albany, New York, which is the capital, not New York City. If you're not from New York, and also it's Albany, not Albany. Also, just
Since this channel is related to Japan, why Japan?
okay. So actually, there's two reasons, I guess, because the question really breaks down into like what got me started with Japanese, and that flowed into Japan. But just quickly. I started studying Japanese because I had to take a language in university, and I'm a procrastinator. I was a serial procrastinator, and it came down to Japanese or Russian.
Okay.
I picked Russian. Japanese. I picked Russian. That's I picked Japanese, and then a couple years had passed. I only had to take 1 year, but I thought it was kind of fun. Actually, I thought kanji was kind of cool, even though I was terrible at it, like terrible. So I took a second year, and I remember at the end of the second year, my Japanese teacher, who was an interesting person, said to me that my effort was there, but my pronunciation was so terrible that the only way I would get better is to probably have to go to Japan. And me, being the kind of person to do things just to do them, was like, all right, let's go to Japan. So that was it. They told me halfway through my second year of Japanese, I started working really hard on my grades, and I ended up getting a Kansai and I moved.
Okay.
That
So Japan, Japanese over Russian.
That's what I'm saying.
Is there anything about Japanese culture that you liked before studying?
I liked, obviously I was a huge fan of a lot of games that have come out of Japan, but I never thought, I want to buy the Japanese versions and understand it. I was just like, hey, Japan has some cool stuff, and Russia seems like they might be in kind of a weird place right now, so, I guess Japanese, that, and also, there just aren't many Japanese speakers in the States. So, if you can speak Japanese, you have this really cool thing where you can talk to other people, and there's no way anyone's going to understand you. Versus something like, Chinese, which is a little more common. I don't think Russian's very common either, actually, but...
Yeah, I had an ALT in my area who spoke Russian.
Well, there
as
you
a first
have it.
language.
So, that's all the validation I need.
If you speak Russian, you can still teach English in Japan.
It's no problem.
I know someone who did it on the JET program.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, since we're talking about our home university in Albany, can you tell me the difference? What's the difference between learning Japanese at our home university versus Kansai?
Yeah, okay, that's good. Before we get to where we're at, let's talk about where we've been. Okay, so my home university was SUNY Albany. Actually, I went as a science major, but I decided to pick Japanese up on the side, right? So I didn't really consider myself a very strong linguistic person, and I also didn't have any background really going in. I mean, everyone takes Spanish in high school, but it's high school Spanish.
Yeah.
And going in, I remember my first semester, I had this, she must have been, pushing 70. I don't know if this is actually true, but it felt like it, right? She's a super sweet lady named, so sweet. And, it was just the super basic, how do you say this is a pen, how you do kanji copying and stuff, right? The thing was, though, after that first semester ended and we got into the next semester, I had another teacher. And I was still in my first year, and she held me to some pretty high standards. I think that's something we're going to probably end up touching on a little bit later. She held me to some pretty high standards, and it made me feel like I liked Japanese, I just didn't like learning with, but I had such a positive experience since I wanted to continue. And then I went and learned under a different teacher, sensei, for an entire year. And she was also a strict person. It was a pretty strict thing, and I was like, man, I guess Japanese is just a really, Japan is just full of really harsh people. I guess their school system is just super serious this way. And that was my honest impression. And then I was like, well, you know what, I want to continue because I really like the language. And I went to Japan. Those people at Kansai it couldn't have been nicer. When I made a mistake, instead of this sort of chiding correction, or my favorite aspect of my experience of the American educational system, which is, this was in the book, you should have known it, which is expecting that 100% comprehension, which, well, okay, sure, whatever, it is what it is. It was super cool because when you mess up and they do that whole oh no, it's okay, go ahead, give it another shot.
Yeah.
Or they give you that hint.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That little boost. It's you've got a lot of stuff going on, it's fine. And it's really nice. And I was like, it turns out that Japanese teachers were incredibly supportive and understanding when I had problems. They were very encouraging. And I guess it was kind of weird because when I talked to my Japanese teachers in Kansagadai, I could talk to them about my hobbies, and we did all kinds of cool. It was really cool. Like, I remember playing guitar by the fountain one time. Guitar player, by the way. Playing guitar by the fountain one time. Then when my teacher came by and he starts talking about hobbies, it's really engaging. And then when I went back and I tried to have that same conversation with I couldn't speak Japanese at all. I just completely locked up because I was so afraid she was going to correct me and judge me for getting it wrong.
So my first year of Japanese in Albany was with, and I thought she was amazing. I loved her to death. She's, for the first year students, she's really kind and sweet, but as Rob said, she's super strict. And I remember sitting in 101, 102, and I would mess up or other students would mess up, and all it would be is just this, constant berating. Maybe not berating, but it was pretty harsh. Yeah. Because you're a university student, they expect a lot out of you because it's Japanese and it's their language. They want, it to be perfect. And I remember going to Kansagadai, sitting in class, and I had this phenomenal woman. I kind of had a crush on her a little, but just she's so nice. And I remember messing up. The first mistake I ever made in the class, I had this just cringe-worthy moment where I was just waiting for her to come down on me.
To drop the hammer?
Just drop it hard. And it didn't come. I'm sitting there kind of like, oh, here it comes. And then she's just like, oh, it's okay. I'll help you. Let's do it together. It's like, why aren't you yelling at me? And I realized that there's a big difference between the teachers in Japan and the teachers
that we had.
That we have. And I would like to say that maybe it's just our school's Japanese teachers. Not to say that they're bad people, but I just don't think they have a real idea of the American education system because they grew up in Japan. They don't know any other way of growing up. They grew up with they grew up with Japanese. And they only know the one way, so...
Oh, it's also, they moved... I mean, these particular teachers that we're talking about specifically,
yeah,
they've moved to the States decades ago.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're also using, modern Japanese teaching practice, because we both worked as teachers. Those teachers are very supportive people.
Yeah.
But they're teaching sort of the older system, which is... I mean, it's more stick than carrot, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's more strict re-encouragement, so yeah.
But, I happen to know Rob has really phenomenal Japanese. He's passed the N1. So since you passed the N1 and you did a lot of your study for the N2 back in New York, do you think it's necessary to live in Japan to learn Japanese?
Okay. Before I answer that, just a really quick thing about the N1 is for anybody thinking about taking it really quick, because I think this is important advice. For the N2, you can learn basically just doing natural things. For the N1, it's a little trickier. You do kind of have to study for it if you really want to excel at your learning, but I don't think it's necessary. And also keep in mind that the N1 doesn't test your speaking. So, I've had instances where I do have N1 level reading and writing, but my speaking, I felt a little behind lately too. So, make sure you're well-rounded. The N1 is not the end-all be-all. The initial question was, do you feel you have to live in Japan to be good at Japanese? So, the answer is a very emphatic no. When I studied in Japan, I came back to the States knowing just about enough Japanese to fight with my girlfriend.
Oh.
Which
useful.
You do need this. You actually do need this. I knew just about enough to fight my girlfriend. I could read menus. I knew how to read and write. Honestly, serious assessment, probably about 300 kanji I could write. Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe that's pretty generous. And read 600.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I stayed in the States. When I was in the States, I threw out all my English stuff. Actually threw out all my English stuff except for textbooks I needed for college. I spoke Japanese whenever it was possible. I ran Skype parties to talk to multiple native speakers at a time. I did language exchanges. Fun fact about language exchange, whoever's language is better is usually where 90% of the exchange is going to take place. So.
Actually, before you go on, I remember you doing those Skype parties and just communicating on Skype with Japanese people. And you ran into a problem that it was, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it was supposed to be a language exchange. Rob gets help with his Japanese, and Rob would help that person to learn English. But it came down to the point where they weren't helping you with your Japanese because you were quote unquote too good.
Yeah.
So they stopped talking to you.
No. Well, it got really weird. I've had a lot of language exchange partners. No, it got really weird. It goes into this thing, and this is natural human tendency, I think, where you go into a language exchange with somebody, and you're like, I want you to correct me when I'm wrong. And then they're like, I can understand. Like, in English, for example, right? If I use the wrong word and you understand what I mean, you're not going to correct me. You're just like, okay, I got you, right? And you get that problem with language exchange where they're like, once you get past that shallow surface, how's the weather or how have you been recently, and you start talking about interesting stuff, no one wants to correct you because they just want you to keep talking and hear more interesting stories. Yeah. So it did become a problem, actually. And I did have a problem with one person in particular where we ended up speaking mostly Japanese, and then they just wanted to stop talking.
Alright.
And it was just because they didn't feel like they could speak English because we were at just different levels. But yeah, lots of Skype parties. I also changed the way that I study Japanese a lot. I use something called the Heisig method, which I think is a great way to get your kanji up to scale. Like I said, my kanji was terrible.
Can you just describe it real quick?
Oh yeah, sure. Brief description. So the Heisig method, the way that you traditionally learn in classes is you learn the way native speakers do. Which is you basically rewrite the kanji a lot and just try to memorize the readings and everything all at once. Yeah, they will give you a block, like a grid sheet of paper, and you just write whatever kanji is 10 times. That doesn't work for me. I got D's in kanji consistently for my kanji grades for that. I switched to something called the Heisig method. The Heisig method is based off of, if you've ever been in a Japanese class and seen a Chinese person take a Japanese class, they destroy it. Kanji-wise, they'll destroy it because they already know all those kanji in their native language. They just have to learn the Japanese reading. For whatever given situation it is, because it can obviously change depending on. Right. That's exactly what Heisig is. Heisig is you'll learn the reading. You'll learn the writing, and you will learn the meaning in English. And then after, once you've learned, I was learning like 150 kanji a day that way. Seriously, like my max day was 150 in one day. And I use Anki to keep track of them because they have some great Anki decks pre-made for that. And I had something like 96% retention over 3 months. I learned all of the standard use kanji in less than 2 months. And then after that, I would just go and sit down and read books that were really interesting. For me, it was porn manga, right? Of course, you read what you're interested in, right? So I would just read porn manga. And the great part about porn manga, of course, is it's targeted at adults. So it uses, but no one wants to feel stupid reading porn manga. So it's not going to use crazy esoteric characters. So you've got interesting content, real usage of the characters, and between those two methods and just looking up the readings one at a time when I found them, like, I don't know how to read this. Oh, Bumblebee is right, Hachi. Okay, done. Yeah. I ended up just using those two methods to pass the end too. That and talking to native speakers all the time. Yeah. So you definitely don't need to be in Japan.
I actually know. So speaking of which, because that's a very adult topic, and clearly if you're over 18, you have that ability. But if you're younger and if you're watching this video, you might not have the ability to go off and buy pornography. So I remember taking my third year Japanese class in Albany, the 300 level class that's offered, and it kicked my ass. But I walked out of the class with the better part of knowing 1,500 kanji, and I always thought that was really practical. But now that I've returned to Japan and I've been here for 5 years, and I haven't been to America my entire time since coming back to Japan. I found that, you'd think that my kanji ability would just explode, but I don't even remember half those kanji I learned.
Because you don't
use it. So, there's a good argument to be made that if you study Japanese in the United States or whatever your home country is, there's a good chance that you'll probably learn more kanji, before you come than you will once you're here. Unless if you come here with no Japanese ability whatsoever.
Or if you come here and continue intensive studying.
Of course.
But I'd say at my peak, at my peak sounds like a weird thing to say, like I'm a trainer or something. But no, at my peak, I had finished the last Heisig book and done some independent research because I had a bit of kanji mania, and I could read and write and know the meanings of about 3,700 kanji.
That's crazy.
Which is because they have it's a little over 2,000 daily use. Then you have about 1,000 kanji that are used in names and places, and then you have another 600 because I just loved kanji. It was bananas about it. So, but now, no. We look at the kanji for, what was it? Rakuno? Right?
Yeah.
Like dairy products or dairy. I honestly don't even know how to say that in English, but it's like dairy product pizza or something. And the guy at so we went to see Izakaya, and there's like this like rakuno pizza, like it's like dairy and like this kanji for farming and pizza. And I turned to the wait staff and I was like, "Do you know how to read this?" And he just stared at it and laughed to himself, right, for like 30 seconds. He was like, and then Jesse goes, pulls out his dictionary and goes, I think it's Rakuno. And the guy goes, yeah, Rakuno. Anyway, margarita pizza, right. And then, do you want drinks?
That's all it was, margarita pizza. That's all it was.
But yeah, but they called it Rakuno.
Oh, no, but like, no, it's true. Like, I mean, definitely my speaking ability has really, really gone way up. And again, going back to, like I said, I've never actually taken any of the JLPT tests because, as I already said, I freeze up when it comes to taking that kind of stuff. But I am going to be going to take the N2 sooner rather than later. But no, yeah, if you're worried that you don't have the money to study abroad, if you're really devoted and diligent with your studying, you don't need to come here. Just focus on getting your degree and then coming here and really enjoying life. Yeah.
Actually, speaking of that, speaking of devotion, another thing, and I think it's important. When I was in the States and I was studying, no exceptions, not even Christmas, I studied for 6 hours a day.
He did
every day.
It was ridiculous. Like it's not even bullshit. I saw this guy study. He's like, "Yo, man, you want to hang out?" No, I'm studying.
I gotta study.
He literally studied for 6 hours a day.
I remember I would carpool with my girlfriend, and I would do flashcards on the way because she would drive. So we take turns, but basically she drove all the time. So I was totally cool with that because I would do flashcards on the way there, on the way back. I'd get home, I'd try to schedule at least one state party or conversation a day, and then I'd have to do at least 50 cons in the library between classes. And then when I got home, it was all just flashcards review, and then okay, great, now I've got all that done. I'm gonna read some porn manga, and that's at 6 hours a day.
Right. So and clearly Rob's interest lies in reading porn manga.
I have loads of it in my apartment. And, yeah,
it's true. Anyway, but again, if maybe pornography is not your thing, but the point is, like, I've seen so many people over the years who are like, oh, I just started studying Japanese, so I want to learn how to read children's books. You're an adult. Why do you want to do that?
Read something that's interesting that you like.
Right. Like for me, like I like mixed martial arts. I like judo. I used to wrestle. I do this YouTube channel. So I have lots of interests that I can look up and read in Japanese and find something you truly love and then use that your love of that thing to learn Japanese, to boost your Japanese. Yeah. Don't sit there and read. By all means, if you want to read children's books, go for it.
Don't feel obligated though.
Yeah, but don't feel like you have to do. You have to do it. I thought I did. So I remember trying to find like these bilingual children's books.
Yeah, same thing. They're so boring and they're so and they don't have any kanji. So like on the reverse, there's just streams of hiragana. It's really hard to parse that when you're a beginner.
Yeah.
Because you don't know where the words end.
Well, the thing is, like when you're first learning Japanese, you have the hiragana. It's like, oh, okay, I'm reading the hiragana, no problem. But once you develop a kanji ability, it turns into kind of actually a nuisance.
It's true.
Because there's so much that might be said, but through context that you might get as a native speaker, but you're not going to pick that up necessarily as a non-native speaker, and without kanji for context, it's even harder.
And also they have challenged Japanese sentences where they're written all in hiragana and you're supposed to guess what they're saying. Yeah. Because without kanji context, of course, with the context, like that sentence and all the paragraph around it, yeah, you can usually understand. Yeah. But just the sentence by itself, kanji makes it faster to read. Yeah. It's nice. It really is nice.
Right. So we did the study abroad. We both returned to the United States, both graduated and both came back. Slightly different times. So Rob came back working for a juku for legal reasons. We're not going to say the name of the company.
Yeah, of course.
So let's start off with the juku because he's had multiple jobs here in Japan. So let's start off with the juku. Sure. What was it like to work for a juku versus? Well, okay, let's just start with the juku.
Okay, so you go through the hiring process in the States and stuff like that. They have to sign your certificate. First, I contacted the company. They got back to me pretty quickly. Actually, it was really fast turnaround time. I had to go interview. The interview was a little ways away. But once all the processes were wrapped up, I got my visa stuff processed. You got to wait about, I think it was 3 months for my certificate of eligibility to come through.
Okay.
Get that. Then I went off. It was a little bit weird. I got kind of shipped around the country. I don't want to get into specifics because if I do, anybody who knows the company is going to know what company it is. I got kind of shipped around a little bit, but I ended up settling down up in Sendai, which was an experience because it's very countryside, even the main city area. Working for a juku though, that once everything got settled, the students were amazing. Like I had some students that I would be completely okay never seeing again in my life. But most of my students were absolutely incredible, like adorable. So like you always hear teachers say, "My students are so great," and you're like, "It's a job, man." But like I got there, and you have these little like 5-year-olds who are just like, "I'm gonna take you home with me when the class is over. That's okay, right?" And I'm like, I would pinch your cheeks if I were if that were socially acceptable in any context, right? Like they're just so sweet. The kids were absolutely incredible. I did have some serious problems with the management of the company, which also something I would very, very strongly recommend is if you're thinking about working in Japan at all, take a day and read up on your rights.
Yeah.
Read up on what's okay. And I'm going to give a very specific example about when I left that company. So again, my really quick, my JUCO though, the schedule was your schedule changed month to month. We had to go to different classrooms like every week. If it wasn't like you just one building, we had to go all over the place. There was a lot of travel involved. I had to stay in a hotel in Fukushima for a week a month, which was, I mean, the Fukushimas were absolutely incredible, and that was in that whole area. The area I stayed in, the reason why was because all the trains were all blown out, so I was the closest, even though I was in Sendai. I had to go by bus. That was a little bit stressful. Because you're away from your like personal your partner and all your friends and everything, and you're just like in a hotel. There's nothing I could do. The hotel didn't even have like a microwave. I didn't have anything. I had like a water boiler. So you're eating like convenient bento and stuff. But that was really nice. Like the kids were really, really nice. The experience was. But no, when I ended up leaving the company, and something the reason why I say you should really read up on your rights is I was late for a class, and that's on me. That's actually completely my fault. Luckily, there was a teacher that I was co-teaching with that day. It was completely random. Usually we're the only people in the classroom. It was my fault. I misread my schedule. 100% on me. But the problem I had was so that company had a special clause where if you were late for a class, you had to show up 2.5 hours early for every class for a certain amount of time.
Okay.
But that 2.5 hours, you're expected to remain in the classroom, but it didn't count as paid time, didn't count towards breaks, didn't count towards anything, which is a violation of labor law. And also something else that's really important is that particular company only had that stipulation for native teachers. So if you were a Japanese teacher and you were late, you didn't have to do that. But if you were a native teacher, they said that you had to come early. And there's a very, very specific clause of Japanese labor law that says that you can't treat your employees differently based on nationality. So, and I just went directly to my company and I was like, look, it seems, and we had a phone conversation about it, and you have to be direct. And they were like, you have to come early. I was like, I'm not coming early, but let me explain why. And I explained to them that that's a violation of that, and I had the exact clause with me, and I explained it, and they said, well, you sign a different type of contract than our Japanese teachers, so we're allowed to hold you to different standards. And I was like, that sounds suspicious to me, but you know what? Why don't you go ahead and forward me the paperwork? I'll take a look at it, and then we continue the conversation. And they dropped it. And that was it. And it never got forwarded again. And that realistically could have been because I was on my way out of the company already. I only had like a month left. It could have been. But knowing your rights is extremely important.
It is, yeah.
It's really important to know what's legal.
That said, try not to be late for work.
Yeah, no, that was 100% on me.
All right, so that's just one story from what you've had. Is there anything that you would say that's like highly positive other than the students?
Yes. Okay, this depends entirely on your JUCO. I've heard some people say they were terrible schedules. My JUCO allowed me to get the jobs that I had later because it gave me a ton of free time. Okay. It gave me time because I passed the N2 pretty much right after I got to that year that I got to Japan. I passed the N2, okay. But it gave me time to brush up. It gave me time to start studying programming. It gave me time to do cultural things and spend time with my girlfriend because I had days where I worked like maybe 6 hours of lessons, but you have prep and travel and stuff. So I was at the house like 10 hours, like a normal work day. I actually honestly had days where I would teach one lesson. So, okay. And you get paid for the full day. They just pay you for the full day. So I would travel for 20 minutes on the train. I would teach one lesson. I would go home. And all that other time, that's all free time. So if you feel like you want to be productive and you choose your JUCO carefully, it's absolutely a great way to earn money while you're going to advance to your next step.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's good. How about like red flags? But other than the story you're saying, which you said it was your fault.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would say from the company that you've heard of or you had to dealt with that company? Again, no names. Sorry, that you would say is a red flag.
Yes. Okay. So if you can tell what kind of situation you're going to be getting into by the way the other staff talk about your company.
Okay. Yeah.
So, like, everyone likes to complain about their jobs to a certain degree, right? Or everything. It's a legitimate grievance, right? We like to talk about these things. But if you're just hearing constant streams of negativity, that's a heads up.
Mm-hmm.
So if you get into it and somebody like, I remember my my third day of training, we had to go out and just watch another class, right? So I just went out, watched class, whatever. And there's an experienced teacher there, and we're walking back to the station after all the classes and everything. And I remember she was like, you have to be really careful of X person in head office because if something happens, they'll just throw you under the bus. And I was like, what? And then she started explaining like all these people in our head office and all these negative personality traits that they had. And I mean, to be fair, it did play out. I'm a very positive person. It did play out that way. So if you're getting like that kind of warning in the room, just be ready with a backup.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Okay. So another important thing to discuss is that there's a difference between Juku and Eikaiwa. Juku is explicitly meant for after-school programs for students. So students go to school all day, and they'll finish school. They'll do their club activity, and then for a lot of kids, they end up going to Juku cram school until however late at night. So it's exclusively Juku, not
Mine?
Yeah.
Well, no, my class, I mean, to be realistic, our company did start that way.
Okay.
And the vast majority of my classes started at about 4:15 and ended around 9:45.
Okay.
So yeah, but no, we did very occasionally. I had classes as early as like 8:45. Not 8:45. I don't think that. I think it was 10:45. We did have a few morning classes, but no. My technically we were in Eikaiwa.
Okay.
But all of my classes, the vast majority that I taught, not all, but the vast majority that I taught, they were evening.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I had the same schedule as all my friends that taught Juku pretty much.
Did you teach adults?
No, I taught, the oldest student I had was a 19-year-old.
Okay.
We taught from, technically we taught from like kindergarten. We taught from, technically we taught from like 2 years old when they would come with their parents and teach.
Yeah.
So I guess technically that way I taught adults, because we teach parents,
yeah.
but no, outside of that, it was mostly kids. I'd say third grade up.
Okay.
Is where the main,
all right,
the bulk of our money was.
Right.